Here we go. Testing. Hey, can you hear me? Mic check.
Testing, testing, testing.
This is Lori. I can
Testing,
hear you.
testing. Testing, testing, testing.
I can hear you.
Testing, testing, testing.
Around there. It's been Monday all day. No, I think. And it wasn't our job. Good. That's good. We wouldn't want to be here. We ought to be. Exactly. You're exactly right. You get your coffee as warm as it is. Do in the morning. It was so humid that I did not make it all the way from Watts to the courthouse without sweating.
No, sure. No, because we just sat out on the front porch and as soon as you hit the outside, it's just a wall. You go, this is only, and it's supposed to be this way.
I was talking to one of my president friends.
It is.
And then the weekend's supposed to be even worse.
Okay, good morning. It is 10 o'clock and I'd like to welcome you all to our regularly scheduled board meeting Tuesday, June 21st at 10 a.m. The Texas Government Code permits this Board of Trustees to meet in a closed executive session for the following reasons, among others: to consult with the college district's attorneys on matters deemed privileged by the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct or Government Code 551.071, to deliberate regarding real property under 551.072, a prospective gift under 551.073, certain personnel matters under 551.074, security devices or security audits under 551.076, economic development negotiations under 551.087, and security devices or security audits under 551.089. If the board meets in closed session, we will announce the particular section under which we will be doing so prior to initiating the closed portion of the meeting. You'll notice a couple of our trustees aren't here this morning, but they are here on Zoom, Trustee Wells and Trustee Krausen. So welcome, guys. Hope that you can see us okay. Okay, we will move into the invocation and pledge to the American and Texas flags. We've got two students today, Miss Victoria Hemphill from Somerville, a nursing major, and Max McGrory, a business major.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Dear Heavenly Father, I just want to say thank you for allowing each and every one of us to be here this morning. I pray that it be your will and way to take over today's meeting, God. And I just want to say thank you again. I pray that everyone in here just be blessed. And I just want to say thank you. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you coming so much. Okay, it does not look like anyone signed up for public comment this morning, so we will move into the report section of our meeting. 4A, the Chancellor's Administrative Report. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hensley.
Thank you, Chair Colkhorst, and good morning, everyone. And I see a special guest in the audience today, Don Volter, Dr. Volter, former president of Blinn College. Won't you stand up and let us wave and say happy summer to you and welcome. Hello. So happy that you could join us today. Trustees, we have some good news to share about our nursing program. Earlier this month, nursingprocess.org, a website that specializes in nursing and healthcare education, ranked Blinn's associate degree program number 2 in the Southwestern United States. This ranking was based upon the program's academic quality, affordability, reputation, and National Council licensure examination first-time pass rate. This site previously ranked Blinn among its top 5 in the region in 2019, 2020, and 2021, and this represents our highest ranking to date. So I would like to congratulate Vice Chancellor for Health Sciences, Technical, and Community Education, Jay Anderson, won't you all stand, and Dean of Health Sciences, Michelle Trubenstein, and Program Director Calder Ross, and all of our faculty and staff on this outstanding recognition. Trustees, I also would like to share an update regarding the construction projects that are taking place throughout the college district. Prairie Lee Hall is substantially complete and the contractor is addressing the punch list items. Buildings A and B have passed all city and state inspections, and the furniture move-in is scheduled to take place next week, starting next week, June the 27th through July the 29th. The final completion is scheduled for August the 4th, and we look forward to announcing a grand opening date soon. And now over to Leroy Dryer Field. The installation of sanitary plumbing, stormwater lines, roof drains, and metal stud framing are in progress. The exterior stairs and ramp have been framed and are ready for concrete to be poured. The contractors recently began installing the roof, and the renovations to the concession stand and restrooms are ongoing. And this project currently is on schedule for completion in November of 2022. And over to Old Main now. At the Old Main building, the punch list corrections are taking place on the first and second floors, and construction on the third and fourth floors is nearing substantial completion. The furniture installation has been completed on the first and second floors and is in progress on the third and fourth floors. The bell tower sheet metal installation is in progress and roofing is expected to begin in the coming weeks. The refinished bell has been shipped and it is ready and expected to arrive soon. Now, this building we anticipate to be ready for occupancy in August of this year. And then over to Mill Creek with our esports arena, we have begun to convert the large first floor classroom into an esports arena. Furniture has been removed from the room. Thank you, Rich, for moving that slide, please. Well, they just want us to linger about the beauty of Old Main this morning, which we are happy to do. We go from the traditional Old Main to the wow, esports zooming around. Now on this, as you recall, trustees, this is in the first floor of Mill Creek. As you walk into the front door, it's off to your left in that very large meeting room that used to have a lot of computers in it. It was for our engineering academy. That's the space that is being converted for esports. Now the furniture has been removed from that room already. It's passed all necessary inspections, and the contractor is closing the walls with drywall, and the lights and electrical gear are expected to be shipped later this month. And this project also is scheduled for completion in August. Trustees, I'd like to talk to you for a moment about the O'Brien Administration Building. We are experiencing global supply chain issues and associated price increases. So we are working with the architectural design team right now. We'll probably have to go back to the drawing board a little bit on this one. And the construction manager also we're working with at risk, the construction manager at risk to assess our options right now. We will keep you very updated on this. We have some upcoming meetings that are scheduled right away to see what we need to do on this building. But this one is a big heads up. It looks like we're going to run into delays and higher costs than we anticipated on this building. We'll keep you apprised as our options are kind of formulated in the near future. Now over to the Rellis Administration Building. Better news over there. We are installing right now the furniture, the fixtures and the equipment, the window treatments, the audiovisual equipment and the appliances. The interior of the building is substantially complete and the contractor is beginning the punch list work. The final site work items, including landscaping, lighting, and finalizing the student sidewalk to the parking lot is being completed. We are on schedule for this one in advance of the opening of the fall semester this August. Trustees, I would like if you would let me go to the front of the podium. We do have a retiree that I would like to recognize this morning for you. Good morning again, trustees. Trustees, we are joined today by Catherine Kimmy, who recently announced her retirement after 22 years of service to Blinn College and its students. Thank you, Catherine, for joining us today and for bringing some friends and family with you as well. Trustees, Catherine has been with Blinn as the financial aid counselor since October of 1999, helping thousands of students obtain financial aid assistance to support their education and be able to successfully attend Blinn College. Brent Williford, Dean of Financial Aid and Academic Advising, said the following: for 22 years, Catherine has helped students navigate the financial aid process, Her deep knowledge and clear communication skills have made her an invaluable resource for students seeking financial aid to support their enrollment. Catherine, 22 years. It is an amazing amount of service to this college for which this Board of Trustees and the administration and all of our Blinn faculty and staff, and probably most importantly, many grateful students, thank you for the years of service that you have given, 22. And Catherine, I know that our trustees would like to have the opportunity to thank you. So if you don't mind, trustees, if you would please rise. And Catherine, I think they would like to shake your hand. Don't go away. Come on back. Come on down. What is it, Bob Barker? I'll be Miss Bob Barker today. Catherine, is there anything that you would like to say to the trustees or to your Blinn colleagues this morning?
Appreciate the chance to work with the students. I'll miss the students, but I appreciate the chance to interact with the students. I still have students that track me down in Walmart or wherever. So yeah, that's great opportunities you've given me.
Well, that financial aid is very important, so I can see why they're tracking you down. And given the state of some of the things that are happening in the country, that probably others will too. We all need some good financial advice in this time and age, don't we? And I think you brought some friends with you today. Would you like to take the mic and perhaps introduce them?
My sister, who went to Blinn at one time, and my dad.
And your dad. Well, why don't you all come up here too? If you'd like, come join us and we'll take a photo. We might step forward about, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, Trustee Chair Colcourse has something to give you on behalf of the Board of Trustees.
We've got a watch and a certificate for you. And on behalf of the Board of Trustees, thank you so much for the service that you've given to the students of Blinn College. And you know, I hope you have a very enjoyable retirement. Yes, ma'am.
Here. We'll surround you with your loved ones.
I will count to 3 and 1, 2, 3. And just one more time. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you.
Just you, not your family, and just
All right. And 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Colcourse, thank you very much, trustees. That concludes my report this morning.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hensley. Now we move on to item B, presentation of financial statement package for the period ended May 31st, 2022. I think Mr. Richard Cervantes is going to take that portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Hensley, members of the board. I think the IT has finally figured out, don't let him touch the controls and we'll be good. So we are in the 9th month of the fiscal year through the end of May, which means we're 75% of the way through the fiscal year. Our revenue through May is $111.4 million, and our expenses are almost $87 million, which leaves us a net of $24.4 million just through May. There's a big portion of that is still in the HERF. I think that's about $15 million of that is HERF money, and that continues to influence the bottom line as well as the revenue. When we compare our revenues to last year, 111 this year, 111.4 this year compared to 111.5, very close, $194,000 less than what we had the year before. Our expenses, on the other hand, as we've been saying, almost $87 million this year through May, and then 82.3 for last year, are up $4.7 million. Our change in fund balance, $24.4 million this year compared to 29.3 last year, almost $5 million less than what we'd had. And again, HERF had a significant influence on that. Our tuition and fees overall are the percentages down. Auxiliaries is up, and those are real dollars that are up on auxiliaries I'll show in a second. And then the far right is the HERF money influence from most. You can see a little bit less of percentage this year compared to last year. I think it represents about $1.5 million at this point. Our $69.1 million is our $0.2 million is our actual budget in tuition and fees. And right now we're pretty close to about $60 million, 87%. Highly likely that we're going to exceed that budget, which is good for us. Our tuition revenue is up, but the only one that is down is up $102,000, but not a substantial amount. In district, out of state, and even the non-funded are all up. That's the only one that's down. Our fee revenue, most of its general fee is slightly down, not very much, but as we've been saying, the technology fee had a significant influence from last year, and that number continues to go down. The workforce continues to, there's a couple $100,000, as I mentioned before, that was in 2021 that was a carryover from the previous year, and they've still not been able to catch up to that, but that's the reason for the difference. Housing and food service, $11.1 million was our budget compared to the actual $7.6 million. Those two auxiliary numbers. Housing is probably the lower one. Food service is still at a positive, but it represents 68% of our budget at this juncture. Auxiliary services is up as a whole, the $1.5 million, 19%. Food service is up as we've had more students that have returned to campus. Bookstore is up, again, as they've returned to campus, they've frequented the store, and then parking is up dramatically. Our total expenses are up $4.7 million, as we suggested, and the biggest portion of that is the E&G expense, as we'll talk about a little bit in a minute, and the R&R expenses. We didn't budget anything last year, but this year we do have those expenses. Payroll expense is still pretty flat compared to previous years, 53.4%. We do expect that will continue to rise as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year. The revenues will level off, but the expenses will continue. Our debt service right now is almost at 8%, pretty close to what it had last year. Same thing, we expect the revenue will continue to go up, and therefore that percentage will go down. Expenses by category, salaries is just a little bit less than what we had the year before. We mentioned the E&G expenditures, the travel and the consumables and things of that sort. Those line items are higher. And then R&R, you can see with the 1.4 compared to last year that we didn't budget at all in this. The operating expenses are 3.6% or 5%. Auxiliaries is probably the one that stands out the most. So we've had some food cost, and they've had to order more food as a result of students coming back to campus. So our student cash and refunds in May totaled a little bit over $6 million. The student payments is the bulk of that, $6.1 million. We had a little bit of student refunds, $131,000, and then some financial aid drawdowns. The other cash receipts in May total $4.4 million. State appropriation is the biggest portion of that, 2.4. We did reimburse ourselves for some of the HERF institutional $1.7 million. Our use of cash in May is still high, $11.8 million. The big portion of that difference is the construction, $3.3 million. Payroll, we did check into it. I hadn't seen it go over the $6 million mark in a while, but it looks like that is accurate. So net cash received from students, $6 million. Cash received from other sources, $4.4 million. We ended up using a large amount, $11.8 million, which led to a net decrease of $1.3 million. We did decrease some of the funds in the investment pool and increase some in the operating pool as we move forward. There was probably money that was left over that had been brought in. Our unrestricted cash and cash equivalents is at $126 million through the month of May. I would expect we had a property transaction that occurred at the beginning of this month. So next month, I think that number would go up slightly. Another $4.3 million or so. Our higher education emergency relief funds, we're getting closer to that using up. We used some more of the institutional funds. Our expectation is that we will use that all up by the end of the year, closer to, you can see on the far right, that blend blue, $1.8 million that's remaining. We do have plans for that, so our expectation we'll use it up. Stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cervantes, were there any revenue portions that were unexpectedly high or unexpectedly low?
I can't think of anything, Mr. Chairman, that stood out. We still have the differential in HERF, the 1.5, so that's going to be a moving target and through the end of the year. The bookstores up, that's a good thing. It didn't, with all the students that were not on campus, they didn't have any traffic. And so now having the traffic increase some of that. So that one, I didn't know how that was going to respond, but it looked like it is favorable. Parking is a little bit of is a very pleasant surprise because the amounts are so large. Again, with students coming back to campus, that's a very healthy increase for us.
In anticipation of the fall, this fall with the, first of all, with gas prices, but other items that have increased possibly in food and so forth and so on. Do we anticipate do we have a plan of action to try to minimize some of that? I mean, I can imagine what it costs to send these, everybody, whatever the cost is. I mean, the gasoline cost alone is going to be astronomical versus what we've done.
We've not had that discussion, but we've had some very preliminary comments made, and you can see it coming that the inflationary aspect will affect more than the budget for personnel. We've focused on the personnel part of it, and you'll hear that discussion in a little bit. But there will be increase in other parts of the campus travel. We're starting to still see some more of that. But from a budget perspective, that one is still way below the amount that we had budgeted. So even the inflationary cost, I think we're okay. I think we could almost say the same thing with all of those other. There are budget items where they still have not used up a significant part of their budget, and those will hopefully offset the inflation. But in answer to your question, we're beginning to have some of those discussions. It's just started.
Any other questions, Trustee?
Mr. Cervantes, I saw you had that Servitas transfer listed up there. My question is, I think once a year we have an annual accounting of the entire Servitas or Mill Creek Hall, I guess you could say financial projections, so forth and so on. Help me remember when that is.
There are a number of benchmark dates, timelines, and one of them is they have to submit a budget to us prior to the end of their fiscal year, which is the end of June.
June, okay.
So they have already submitted the budget to us. It's very conservative, still has a positive balance, but very small. And their occupancy costs that they are planning for, as we have, they've reduced it down just in case it goes that way. The other part of that is their annual financial statements, because they end in June. They'll take 2 or 3, it really won't have any completion on the audit until somewhere around November. for the current year that we're in. At that point in time, we count the chips and then figure out which ones are going to come our way and which ones stay over there.
And another reason I was asking the question is we're getting ready to have another one coming on over at the Prairie Lee Hall.
Yes.
So I guess my question is, has our experience with Servitas in the Mill Creek project been successful from your assessment?
Well, that's a good question. Has it been successful? Well, we're going to have a building, so that clearly is a success. I would, and I have told as many people this as I possibly can, remember that we borrowed at a time when the rates were super high. So at the earliest opportunity, right now we're at 5%. So at the earliest opportunity, that needs to be refinanced and hopefully bring down a much lower rate. We'll see how that goes. So from that, and then from the financial perspective, it does look like the first year, the year that we're getting ready to go into for Prairie Lee, there will be a substantial amount of funds that will come back to the college. And the reason why that is happening is they're not making a debt payment next year. So any excess cash ends up coming back to the institution. Now, that won't happen until the following fiscal year because they're going to close that out in November. And again, we'll count all the money at that point and then we'll reconcile.
I think one of the issues that probably was kind of negative on that was COVID.
COVID had a big impact on us, had impact on them, had impact. I've seen the Barnes and Noble and their impact on their retail operations. So yes, it impacted all of us, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you.
Richard, tell him, what is refinancing? What are we talking about there?
When you, Mr. Moser, we borrowed at 5%. So the hope is that if we can refinance, and they'll have a period of time that they will not allow you to refinance, but after a certain period of time, and I couldn't tell you what that is off the top of my head, they will allow you, if it's in your best interest, you would refinance. So you try to get a lower rate, either 4 or 3.5 if we're really lucky, somewhere in that. And then you will have that program or that project will have interest rate savings over the life of the loan. We did the same thing a couple years ago when we issued bonds. We did them both at the same time. We issued bonds, but we also refinanced some of our debt at a lower rate and ended up with savings over a period of time. I want to say like $1.6 million over the time that loan is in existence. So like refinancing, you can look at it kind of like refinancing your house. If you borrowed at a very high rate, that it would be in your best interest at some point if the rates go down to refinance, basically.
I wouldn't think that's going to happen.
We originally had a great rate through the USDA that time, if my memory serves me correctly, and yeah, it was about 3%. And what happened was there was a change in the administration, and they cut off all the funding from the USDA, if I remember. So we had to go to the alternative source, which is more or less the corporate markets. That's where we're sitting now. And really, that is not our debt. It's more or less Servitas's debt. But the lower the debt, the more income we get. So I just wanted to make sure it's not our debt that we're paying the interest. It's Servitas that's paying the interest. So
yeah, that's the point I wanted to be sure on when you said refinancing. That's not really us. I mean, that's
good point. It absolutely is correct. It's not on our books. It's on the
house and to go home thinking that
it's the public-private partnership, and that partnership through NCCD will have the debt that they will have to assume.
It'll be likely to their benefit to try to refinance as soon as they're able to, and that'll save us money if they do that.
Yes, and we would give them high encouragement to move in that direction.
If it goes up, we're still on the hook for that too. So
yes, that's possible too.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Cervantes?
I do have a quick question. housing seems to be the area where we still are lagging behind as far as monetarily. So this may be more for you, Dr. Bride, is when will we know the level of Prairie Lee, the occupancy? Would that be at the end of July?
Very good question. It's going to take until August, to be quite honest. We're onboarding students now. I can tell you that we are several hundred ahead of where we were last year.
That's
So in terms of applications, so things are looking very good.
okay.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Cervantes. I appreciate the report. We're going to move on to item C, the institutional enrollment report for the 2022 spring semester, May mini-mester, and summer one session. Dr. Becky McBride.
Good morning, Dr. Hensley, Chair Cocourse, members of the boards. Nice to see you all today. We're going to briefly discuss this morning our enrollment. We'll start with the spring semester. As you can see on the slide, we're down slight decrease, about 2% for spring of this year. I'd like to note an article that was shared in OneNote with the group just from last month from the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center, that nationally there was a decline of 7.8% for community college enrollment across the US, which was the hardest hit group, was our group. So just in terms of thinking, there are fewer students going to college right now. And you can see by campus the breakdown that we had from this past semester. Our next slide shows the May mini numbers. We did have an increase there. Something I'd like to note is that the majority of the courses for the May semester are online. So students do not have to physically come to campus. And on this slide, we have the summer one numbers. And you can see in the column that we're slightly behind where we were last year. For this summer, we are inviting students to come more back onto campus. That is a difference from last summer, where the majority of our courses were online due to the pandemic. So that is a change there. Any questions or comments, please?
Do you think that the fact that are we requiring kids to come on campus, or is that an optional thing? And do you think that had an impact on the summer one session number?
I think it depends on the situation. And we talk about inflation and cost of things. It may determine what a student decides to do. Yes, but we also are not a virtual school. So we do want students back on campus. So I think there's a little bit of give and take there, to be honest.
Can I ask a question regarding this first sheet on the head count? We're down, it shows being down a little bit from last year. And then the contact hours and credit hours, is that something you can, I mean, is that directly proportionate to the enrollment number? I mean, the loss there, or is that something that there's no correlation to those numbers, or is that?
It depends if the student decides to take more credit hours. If the student takes more credit hours, some of them decided to take more, and that would increase the head count and, of course, the credit hours they enroll in.
Mr. Chairman, this is Dennis. I'd like to ask a couple of questions.
Yes, sir, Mr. Krausen.
Dr. McDonald, can you go to the next slide, I guess, and let's talk about the campuses. Really disappointing, go back one, disappointing numbers here. I mean, this is numbers that are akin to about 2009 enrollment. A couple of areas I'd like you to comment on. One is the Brenham enrollment. I'm a little bit surprised there, especially when we were told that, things were looking up when you reported back, I think in December or January, the loss of numbers there. And then the other one that's really surprises me a little bit is the distance ed number has gone down so much, probably the first time in history. Can you comment a little bit on those things?
Sure, and I might ask the question again to make sure I understand the clarification. You're curious about the Brenham campus for spring in terms of the number being lower than last year, am I correct?
Well, sure. I mean, that is a question. You know, with all the programs we're starting, and, you know, with the new dorm coming in place, it's very concerning that that number is so low right now.
Understood. And typically, my understanding is the spring is students do, we don't have as many students in the spring as we do in the fall. I think we just had students, we had a lot of students who finished up and moved on in terms of their academic careers. When we look at the future, as I said, numbers are looking much better for the fall. So I have a lot of hope there moving forward. And distance education, I know we offered more courses, as I mentioned, on campus and getting students back on site. I believe that's why the Brine number had increased, because students were back on campus again. And I don't know if Dr. Busicki has any insight in terms of distance education you'd like to share.
Dr. Crosser, I think that one of the items that, as it relates to distance education that I'm looking right now, sorry, is that we have a surge in distance education since the pandemic, and it was considerable. Now, that was artificial, obviously, because those are the options that we gave to students in 2020 and the 2021. Now that we open the campus, there is a tendency, and this is a statewide tendency, that we will lose students in the online modality that will be coming back on campus. So that is, and if we look at those numbers, those are small numbers, but if we look there, it seems that we had 2,000 students in 2018 or 19, this is too small. So, and we are 4,000 now. Last semester, we had 4,000 plus 4,407. So there was about almost doubled the online options for students. It's very natural that that will come down, and it might even come down a little more as we receive students back on campus. Would that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And I guess the big question now is, what are we going to do to improve these numbers in the future?
For the online?
All together, the bottom, the total there of 15,167.
Yeah, we are, in terms of the support, I think that Academic Affairs is giving great support and working very closely with the student services. I understand that there is a robust movement or program in student services to reach out to the high schools, all our high schools. We had a recent meeting a couple of weeks ago, and that was brought up that we will really be more perhaps active and not waiting for the students to come to us, and more and move towards going and get those students, particularly as it relates to the high schools, because those would be new students for us.
Thank you. No more questions.
Any other additional questions for Dr. McBride on this topic?
Jim, I just have a question. We've been doing a lot of advertising, maybe too early to tell, but we've been doing a lot of advertising related to the Washington County scholarships. And I was just curious if we know where we might be on that at this point, and if we feel that it has increased, I guess you could say, potential enrollment to our district.
That's a good question. If I could do some research and get back with you with
Okay.
specifics. But just to touch upon what Dr. Busicki was saying, it is true. We are working very closely with many of the school districts this summer, even going to be communicating not just with seniors like we did this past year, but juniors and seniors in high school to extend our outreach and be a common name and to get students to come see us. I know this fall semester of 22, we're planning on working with at least 6 districts to go in with our staff to help students apply to Blinn, do their FAFSAs, whatever needs to be done with those seniors as well. So we're making a larger footprint in terms of our presence in our county and surrounding areas.
If I may follow up, because one thing that was mentioned is, we're talking about the schools, but seems to be a larger and larger homeschool program going on out there. What are we doing, if anything, to try to engage those in coming at Blinn?
Those students that are, if they're connected with a local district, because they have to be connected with a high school or a junior high, or whatever school they're with, we do reach out to those students too, once
that
we get
media?
there. Yes.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do we have goals? Do we anticipate numbers ahead for this fall? I mean, do we have something that we want to try to achieve, or, is there a benchmark that we're looking at? I think that would be helpful to know.
To know what we're
Yeah,
thinking.
what do we?
My goal, I want to see at least the 2020 numbers. That's my goal. Realistically would be 2020. 2019, in my understanding, is our highest enrollment ever. And with everything going on with inflation and society and the pandemic still unfortunately there, I think the 2020 numbers are where we should be looking.
Okay, Trustee Wells, Trustee Krause, and do you guys have any follow-up questions before we move on?
No, sir. Thank you.
No, sir.
Thank you, guys. Okay, then we are going to move to, Dr. Ryder will stay on stage, and we will move to item D, the Spring 2022 Graduation Report.
Okay, good morning. We're going to continue our conversation a little bit, talk our graduation numbers from this spring. Of course, there's a link. You can watch the video of our 145th commencement. We did have about 210 students actually participate. I'm not sure, I didn't count while we were there, but I knew there was at least 200 students that were with us that fine evening to end the semester. As we look at this slide, just for some quick definitions, I am going to touch base on lost graduates on the next slide, just to bring us up to speed with that. And as you can see, our numbers, we did have an increase from last year to this year in terms of regular students who graduated in the spring term. The lost grads, just wanted to comment that we're caught up from the past. I know the number looks very high, the 269 from 21, but we've caught up with students that we learned had completed their degrees after leaving Blinn. So that number should be pretty steady around the 150-ish as we move forward into the future. The next 2 slides are related to our STEM graduates who received degrees, associate degrees or certificates. What's pleasing to see on the next slide is we did have an increase in students that did complete in these areas. Any questions or comments, please?
I do. The lost grads, since you brought it up, that was one of the things when I was looking at it, I wondered about. Do we get penalized for those students not graduating? No.
No, we don't get penalized, but
Okay.
it is to our benefit to recognize that they did finish and get credit for those students.
So do we go out and do outreach to find out
Yes,
what happened to them?
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Trustee Kokors, this is Layton. Can I make a quick comment on that, Trustee
Sure.
Taylor?
Yes, sir.
Part of our success point funding comes through these graduations and these different
Mhm.
items. That's why we mentioned the STEM, because the STEM have different weights versus other graduations. So what Blinn did and what Student Services did was embark on a very ambitious and forward-looking lost grad program. So what our Student Services do is they actually go into the system and figure out proactively who is close to graduating. We manually determine who those are, reach out to them to get those lost grads. The reason you see that number decline is we've had a hard push on that the last several years, and we have caught up with the overflow, the backflow, if you will. And that's why Dr. McBride says that number is probably going to be steady, because our proactive measures have reached all of those in the system that were backlogged as lost grads. Now we're going to hit that steady 150 number because that's kind of the normal number. But the reason we did that was we were leaving a lot of success point funding on the table without having without conferring those graduates. So that was a system and program that Blinn put into place to capture not only and help those students, but also help grab some of those success points as well.
Thank you for your explanation, Mr. Schubert. Any other questions, guys? Okay, thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
McBride. Okay, we will move on to the consent item agenda portion of our meeting. All items listed in this portion of the agenda are considered to be routine by the Board of Trustees and will be enacted upon one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a trustee so requests, in which event the item will be removed from consent and considered in discussion and possible action. Trustees receive agenda materials in advance of the meeting to prepare for the business to be conducted. We've got 3 items on the consent agenda. I would look for a motion.
I move that we accept all items on the consent agenda.
Motion made by Trustee Benke,
Second.
second by Trustee Mosier. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Now we move on to item number 6, discussion and possible action items. Item A is the adoption of budget and stipends for fiscal year 2022, 2023. And Mr. Cervantes, I think you're going to make that presentation.
Don't let him touch it now.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Hensley, members of the board. This is a discussion that goes back at the beginning of May at our BAIF, where we met and the college proposed some rates in particular on salary increases. And then we met again at our last regular meeting, and the board provided some more direction to increase that, potentially increase that to 5% so we can see what that looks like. Subsequently, there's been other homework that's been provided to us asking us if we could provide a couple, at least show what a couple other options, and this was coming from the board officers. So this has not changed. A 1% still will be 510. But I did want to stop here a little bit and just highlight again on that third bullet, increasing the minimum wage from $11 to $15 for full-time and part-time staff, as well as the bullet right after that, increasing the full-time faculty entry level from 42 to 45,000. This is it goes way back for human resources or for payroll to ensure, as they're looking at pay increases for the upcoming year, that they don't pay somebody less than what they had received for the previous year. And the reason why you do that is mostly because benefits end up going up so high. And so you always have to watch that, particularly at the lower levels. And I've seen this at other institutions. It's probably been going on at Blinn for some time too. They take care of those folks that are at their lower level to make sure that they're not receiving a negative paycheck. And they've done that here too. I couldn't remember because we've had a few iterations on that health insurance rate increase. This is I think important to point out too, because I think it is abnormal, but it's worked out not only to Blinn's benefit, but to our employees' benefit. There have been no health insurance rate increases over the last 2 years. That's phenomenal. That's saved us as well as saved these individual or the employees a significant amount of money. So we've been very fortunate in that regard. So the first compensation option that we put up is, this is the one that we showed you at the BAIF, would cost us a little bit over $2 million. This is both salary as well as benefits. For the 5% increase, and I'll show you in a little bit what that looks like, that would be $2.6 million, the $510,000 increase for every 1%. That's essentially what that is. Option 3 that had been suggested that, and option 4 had suggested that we get a look at that too. So we chose the median salary for the 700 and something employees, full-time employees that Blinn has. And so half of those people, potentially personnel, would receive a 6% increase in salary, and those that are above would receive a 4%. The number actually goes down from, you see the 5% increase, the college would save itself about $150,000. But these numbers still need to be vetted a little bit more, because we've just took the line, the median, put the line in the sand and looked at the implications above and below. But what will happen is there will be compression issues. So it could be, if you give somebody a 6% raise, they actually make more money than the person that's right above them, just because of the way that we've set this up, and that person's going to get a 4%. And then what we don't know, because we need some time to study it, those compression issues could continue, because it's like a domino effect. You do this one person, you try to make it fair for that, and then you just keep going and going. So the next option was the combination of 6% below the median and 5% above. It had the highest amount, as you would expect, not only incorporating the full 5% increase for those above the median, but also an additional amount for those that are below. So you can see the significant, really more of a significant increase between option 1 and option 4. It would cost the college another $680,000 or something of that sort. So this hasn't changed, but I was reminded of so many discussions that I've had with boards over the years where budgets are very fluid, and you continue to do what you need to do to be able to make them work. Well, what the college is recognizing here is that we're not going to have that safety net of the $4.1 million anymore. That's going to go away. So we removed it from the budget. So the federal funds will go away. We've played with this number off and on from a budget perspective over the years, removing the contingency and adding the contingency. We had been very, very good over the years when we did have that item budgeted that we would not spend it. And so, and I think Chair Kolkhorst many years ago when he was first starting looked at that, and I remember his comments saying, oh, so if you're not spending, that's almost kind of it's going to flow down to your bottom line. You can see that. And at that point, I don't know if that was 2 or 3 million, I can't remember, but we had it as high as $3 million. So that's a substantial amount that if you don't spend it, it's going to go down to your bottom line. But now we don't have any of that. So we're moving into the unrestricted monies, and we're budgeting some of this out of that. It's a good chance we won't need that contingency, but we're not going to have that buffer anymore. That's my point that I'm trying to make to you. As well as we've done the same thing with R&R, where we've removed that and put it back over the years. They have not spent as much of that for various reasons over the years. So there were savings there from a budget perspective too that flowed down to the bottom line. That is not going to happen anymore, at least not this year, because now all of this is going to be paid out of, and they will have some expenses out of unrestricted cash. So I just wanted to make the board aware of that. So how did we go from the 4% to the 5%? How were we able to do that? Well, the top line there that we've highlighted is a reduction of bad debt. Bad debt is not really a cash issue, but it's been in the budget for some time. There's been about $500,000 in there. So you see on the far right, the 5% salary increase, that we were able to reduce that budgeted item, which is essentially an offset to revenue. So it ends up increasing your revenue by taking that out. So you have 430,000, 533. We didn't take out the full amount. And then the top two items below in the proposed cost change, those are the $510,000 increase as a result of doing another 1%. And then we recognized that the health insurance, there were not going to be any increases there. So we were able to take out that remaining 80,000 that we had budgeted a while back. Any questions on that before I go to the next slide? So this is showing on the far left, the option 6% below the medium and 4% above the medium. On the far left, because if you recall, I said we actually had to spend, we were able to spend less money as a result of going to that option. And so we saved ourselves some money. So we did not have to take out the full amount out of the bad debt. We only took out 280,000. We still took out the health insurance, didn't have any other impacts as far as that goes. And then you move to the far right. This is the one that is the most expensive. And we had to make some more adjustments there. So of that $500,000 that we have budgeted for bad debt, we removed all but 30,000 of it. So that was that paid for a good portion of almost that 1% increase as far as that goes. Still took out the health insurance. But this is the only one where we've had to go in. We would have to go in and make additional budget reductions, and that's a bottom square, shows the 787,407. So another $137,000 worth of expenditures. We have identified some items that we would cut, but we obviously haven't done any of that yet. It's just we can make that happen too. Any questions on that one? So this hasn't really changed. The only part, and I'll show you in a little bit, that even as we choose the different options, you still have to have your revenue, your total budget revenue and your total budget expenses matched. So you're not going to see too much of a difference there. Right now, the proposed on the far left is that total revenue, this is at the 5%, by the way, $121.2 million is what has been proposed. And the expenses would match that at the 5%. I wanted to show the historical pay increases. Did have a note here, which I can't see too well. It's covered up. But as I recall, the 5% for 2023, and you can see it again in 2020, those are numbers that are much higher than what you had seen, maybe even from Dr. Volter's time. Those are high numbers going all the way back to 2005 or 6, somewhere around there is the last time we had proposed anything even close to 5%. So this is higher, but we're in abnormal times, no doubt about it, with the inflation being what it is. It's abnormal. The operating expense, I don't know if there's anything here that I need to, has changed right now. This is all pretty close to the same. This is again at the 5%. I highlighted the 121.2 because if you choose the different options and depending on what the board wishes to do, we might have to change it a little bit. And these would be the changes. So at the 4%, if we went back to that at 120.8, 5% is what we're showing you. The 6 and the 4 would be 121.1, just a slightly below. And then the 6.5 would be 121.3. None of this has changed. These are the same repairs and renovations on the various campuses that we had shown before. It's still $4.8 million. That's the amount that we will have budgeted out of our unrestricted cash. It won't be in this operating budget. I stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cervantes. Just for the benefit of you guys that weren't in the board officers meeting, the 6% and the 5% and the 4% and the 6% just kind of came out of a discussion that really in our last meeting when Trustee Bohart was talking about the lower end of the salaried specter, not the hourly specter. The hourlies are going to automatically go to 15, which is going to take them up into a fairly good salary position, but the lower end of the salaries was where we were more concerned with. And so we thought it would be good for the board to get an opportunity to see what the impact of, the 5% and then maybe on that below median, a 6% for that lower end for the board to consider. And so that's why the staff and administration came up with these additional numbers for us to consider.
So just a little bit more information, Mr. Chairman. So if we have, and I'm having trouble seeing the slide here, but or the notes here, but if we have 774 full-time employees, and the college has made an effort in the past to try to take care of those at the lower end of the spectrum, that accounts from a percentage perspective somewhere around 10% of the full-time employees. There also are an additional number of part-time employees that would benefit by the 5% increase too. It's I want to say 70, 80 more employees. So.
Any questions, guys?
You're saying the 6% would affect 10%? Is that what I understand?
No, let me say it another way.
Okay.
So this will be helpful. Sorry about that. I'm sure I confused you. So of the 550,000, which is shown here, you can see it in the minimum rate salary increase. It's below the line that's squared in. Minimum rate salary increase 550,000. So it turns out the majority of those people, full-time staff, all of the full-time staff, all of those full-time staff that are being taken care of at the lower level will not benefit from any of this because they will be getting a greater percentage than any of this. Some of them may be 30%. So it's really being raised up dramatically. But those that have, let's say you're at $14 and now you're going to be $15. That one is a 7%, still greater than anything you have here. And they'll have the choice to say, well, I'd rather have the 7% than the 6%, or certainly the 5%. There are some faculty that will be in a different position now.
So it'd be more the salaried faculty?
There's some faculty that are, if we're going back to this, you can see the increase to full-time faculty entry level from 42,000 to 45. So if you were making 43,000, you'd be 7%, and you'd want to choose the 550,000. You'd make more. If anything above that amount, I don't know the exact line, you're probably going to be more like 4%. So you would benefit more from having, and those choices will be given to them. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I remember this discussion about the hourly rate, so that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Bohart, any thoughts?
I'm trying to analyze this. I think if I recall correctly, and I'm having a difficult time recalling things as I used to, but I think it's called age. But I mean, naturally, I'm going to like option 4 based upon our previous discussions. But one of the things that I was more or less alluding to the last time was something of those that were below the median point receiving one-time stipends so that it did not become part of a salary that's increased going forward all of the time. And my thought process behind that was, if we don't get a hold of inflation going forward, we're going to have to be making further adjustments as well. So I'm just trying to walk through that in my mind. I mean, I guess I did a little quick math. If I did it correctly, I think there was some agreement that option 2 was something we wanted to explore at the last board meeting. Option 4 does take care of the ones that I was concerned about, maybe in a little different manner. And I have seen a lot of, and you probably have too, where schools and some of those have done things to increase certain, giving one-time stipends to certain categories in their system. And I know that some local businesses are doing some of the same. So anyway, that's just my feedback on that. I'm liking option 4. So the cost is $176,000 over what we would have before.
Exactly. That's
You
my,
know, and I think that's really a small price to pay or a small price to pay and be able to help out those who are receiving a wage that is below the median at this present time. So.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mosier.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's only appropriate that we try to just do what we feel like that is the most that we can do under the circumstances that exist with inflation and the 2 or 3 years now that our employees have stayed the course and they've worked diligently to keep things moving along. And again, I think brick and mortar has been our focus a lot, and that's been much needed. But we have spending a lot on buildings and redos and fixing up a lot our facilities. But I think we need to extend that over to seeing that our staff and our professors and our hourly paid employees all know that we appreciate what they're doing, and they are really the most vital part of this institution. And I think that in the financial condition that we're in, we need to step up and do what we can do. And if that means that Mr. Cervantes and his team have to figure out where we're going to massage the budget a little bit, then we do that. But I think we owe it to the people to do that, our staff and our employees. So I would think that option 4 would be a step in the right direction.
Dr. Krausen, do you have any thoughts? I know we discussed this at length at the board officers meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Colcourse. Yeah, I agree. Option 4 is one I would prefer. All along, I've been more concerned with those folks, not necessarily hourly people, but the staff members that are coming on making $25,000 a year. And we've got a lot of those folks, and we really need to do something for them. And hopefully this will move us in a better direction for those folks. So I'm in favor of option 4.
I do have a quick comment, and I'm just asking this out of curiosity, but over here on the very first page, one of the acknowledgements was the starting salary for a teacher was $45,000, I believe, or something.
42 to
45.
42,000 is going to be increased to 45,000.
Yeah, I just see what I read in the paper, but I noticed there are numerous public schools systems around. They're starting teachers at 50, 55. Some of them even, of course, some of them, my daughter teaches down in Cy-Fair, and there's some danger involved with some of that, but I mean, still, they're like $60,000 start to get, for teachers. I'm just asking, is that a compatible thing, or is that totally different than what we do, or I'm curious.
Ask Marie if she could respond to that.
Good morning, Dr. Hensley, Chair Colcourse, trustees, thank you. 45 or the current salary right now, entry level is 43. But then we also calculate experience, education, all of that goes in. So that's just what the starting salary is. But very few people would come in at that because there's additional salary that's added onto that for years of experience and depending on that, and also your level of whether you have a master's degree, a bachelor's degree,
What would
or
be a
you have the
typical
doctorate.
starting
It goes
average?
up from there. Yes, sir.
What would the starting average be then, you think?
Sir,
What would be more likely to be the starting salary of a teacher at Blinn College?
depending on that, I would say it would be somewhere in the 50s, depending on that education and depending on those years of experience.
Thank you.
So Marie, and I don't even know if the person with these, well, let's just say a teacher graduated from college with a bachelor's degree. Are they eligible to teach at Blinn College?
Certain courses, yes.
Okay.
It depends on SACs.
Okay.
And it depends on the co-board. Dr. Basiki and his group, we go in and we take a look at those transcripts and judge from there who's able to teach what.
So basically, I'd forgotten that there's certain other criteria that you have to have in order to even teach some of these courses.
That is correct.
Other than just a bachelor straight out of college.
That is
So,
correct.
okay.
Yes,
okay,
sir. That is
okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say while I'm here, thank you for advocating for all of our employees. This is a wonderful group that we have here. And very grateful for anything that you're willing to do. They work extremely hard. Everybody here has kept the wheels on the bus going through COVID, through some very difficult times. And I just want to say thank you. We have a wonderful, wonderful group of employees here at Blinn College, and that is what adds to the outstanding success that you see every day. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. So is there any other things that we need to think about or discuss before we approve and adopt the budget and fight stipends? Do you have any other information for us?
Just if option 4, if the board chooses to go in that direction, sounds like that's where you're going. I'm trying to get there. So we had on our agenda item, the 121.2, you can see that's not too much different. And it says, I believe the language we used was approximately. So I don't think it changes too much, but here's the one caveat that I would make, and I don't know where it would go. I would hope that it wouldn't be sizable, but I mentioned the compression issues, and there's more study that still remains. And so that number could go up. I wouldn't think we're going up by $1 million or so, but there will be some increases there too. So just a heads up there.
So Dr. Hensley, if the board would like to go with option 4, do we need to vote on option 4 first before we approve the budget?
I think we could together or with it separately. Leighton, what do you recommend, please?
Mr. Chairman, what I would recommend when you approve this item is that in the motion, you mention that you're going with the 6% below and the 5% above the median as built into the budget. So as long as you make that in the motion, that'll be in the minutes, the 6% and the 5%.
Got it.
So Chair Colcourse and trustees, the motion could be as simple as you recommend approval of the budget as presented, including option 4, which is 6%, 5% below and above the median.
Chairman Colcourse, I'm in a position to make a motion for option 4, just as it was articulated.
and approval of the budget as presented.
And approval of the budget is presented.
Okay, we've got a motion on the table by Trustee Wells, looking for a second. Trustee Aylard, second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Yep, yes, sir.
Could we? I would just ask you, would it be, if Mr. Cervantes and his team come up with something that would want us to, I mean, to put some variables or in it, would it be likely that you would want anything to you just go by the book?
I think that would give us enough definition, sir.
Okay. That's it.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Colcourse, if I could take some privilege here. We have Chris Beckendorf, who's the budget director in the audience, and she's having to readjust and adjust and readjust. The homework keeps changing, and I just want
Sorry
to
about that
acknowledge her
homework
for
we
her
gave you
work,
just
and I
recently.
appreciate what she's done.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mr. Cervantes, she's been doing that for a long time, so she's good at it.
She is good at it.
Trustees, if I might, I'd like to express appreciation on behalf of all Blinn faculty and staff. This took a lot of deliberation, and it is a hard choice to make. But this Board of Trustees, once again, has been so impressive and has risen to the occasion. You share your compassion for our employees, and you share your financial support with them, which hits them directly in the pocketbook. And in these challenging times, I know that they would all want to express their sincere appreciation for this very generous pay increase. And today, as we finish up the meeting later on today, we will be announcing this publicly so that they will be aware very soon. Additionally, on behalf of all of the staff, you all have done a commendable and wonderful job. You have worked tirelessly to try to adjust these numbers and to make a solid and sound budget that we can live with. These are not just numbers on papers on spreadsheets. This is what we live and breathe and exercise and implement every day as we live within our established means. And so, Blinn faculty and staff, once again, you are the best, and I thank you most sincerely for all that you do. And I believe today we have together as board and administration tried to vocally and very publicly express what a great college this is and what fantastic and really service-oriented students and faculty we have. So thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Hensley. Okay, we're going to move on to item B on the agenda there. Authorization for the administration to negotiate and execute a contract for contractor services related to demolition of existing structures on the Blinn campus. Mr. Cervantes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Feldhake is going to take this agenda.
Great. Thank you, Mark.
Good morning, Chairman Colcourse, Dr. Hensley, members of the board here and online. Thank you very much. I'm here to present to you agenda item 6B, which is a request that the board authorize administration to negotiate and execute a contract with Albo Construction for the demolition contractor services related to the demolition of Holloman Hall, Memorial Hall, Solons Hall, as well as other structures deemed uninhabitable on the Blinn campus. Just to relay again and remind us, the demolition is part of the master plan. So this is associated with the implementation of our master plan. On May 24th, the college received 4 proposals in response to our request for proposals for demolition contractor services. The committee reviewed those proposals and scored those proposals. And based on the committee's recommendation, the administration recommends that the board authorize administration to negotiate and execute a contract with Albo Construction out of Bryan, Texas, for $657,594 for the demolition contractor services related to the demolition of Holloman, Memorial, Solons, and the other uninhabitable structures on the Blinn campus. In addition, and to kind of clarify what the scope of this is, in addition to the demolition and the removal of these structures, the scope also projects that the project will include the preservation of the existing trees, so the mature trees will stay. We're going to bring in some topsoil and do some fine grading to assure that the sites will drain after the fact, bring in some hydroseeding so that we do have some grass growing to leave the green space. And of course, due to the age of the building, there are some hazardous materials included, and we will be handling those hazardous materials appropriately. Funds for this project are available from unrestricted cash. And with the board's approval, we would be able to move forward with this contractor fairly quickly. So with that, I'll stand for any questions. Yes, sir.
Mark, I need you to give me and I've asked this before to others, that I want to be sure, because I'm going to have, people are going to ask when you start saying, can y'all use those buildings for something out there? Particularly Mr. Conjura and some other people. But my question is there, there's nothing that can be used, you can't tear out the petitions and make it a storage building or a warehouse, or there's no value to any of those that we're going to tear down.
There's a good level of difficulty to try and repurpose those buildings. Their function really is as a student housing facility, and we've seen due to their age and their condition that they're at the end of their lifespan as a student housing facility.
It costs more to rehab it than it would be to build.
Certainly.
Mr. Mosier, a number of years ago, when I first came on, we took a tour of the Solons and Holloman Hall, and we decided to refurbish them. And in hindsight, I think that was an error back then. To repurpose those buildings with all the ADA requirements and the age of the electrical and everything else, even to rehabilitate them into any other function, I think would prove to be very costly. So having seen what they were before, and we've improved them, I can only imagine now. And being with what we're going to have bringing online, this is probably the best use of money.
Yeah. I just wanted to be sure that you had to add on the record once again that's yes, sir. Understood.
So what are the other uninhabitable?
Trustee Ayler, I'll be happy to answer that. Board, we've had discussions about other properties that might need some demolition in the near future, and we've built that into this contract.
Great. And in the master plan, I'm trying to recall, Mr. Felkate, on these structures, the dorms, are those ultimately going to be green space areas? Generally, are we going to use those as potential building sites in the future? I cannot recall.
For Holloman Memorial, we're going to return those to a green space, and that's on the very eastern edge of campus near the railroad tracks. And so in the master plan long range, that will be a green space. We are looking at, and we'll be advertising an RFQ for engineering services to put a parking lot in at the Solons Hall site. So that will be coming before you in the near future.
Okay. Okay, guys, any other questions? Then I would entertain a motion to give authorization.
I don't move. Second, I'll second it. And let him.
Okay, motion made by trustee Bohart, seconded by trustee Mosier. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, motion carries.
Thank
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much. Okay, item 6C, authorization for the administration to negotiate and execute a contract for the college district's customer relationship management system. Mr. Cervantes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Hensley, members of the board. That almost sounded like a question mark. You're going to do this one, but
Yeah, I'm not sure what this is. I'm looking forward to
yes,
it.
after my, and I'll look at Dr. Krausen, after my automated intelligence, artificial intelligence, he's not here to help me on some of those. The college had looked at procuring this service for a number of different reasons. Some of the software that we had for applications that will be embedded inside of this program were going away. And the student services had a desire to have a more comprehensive application that might take care of all of these things that they need to have done. So they issued a proposal with the expectation that the cost of that would be actually less than $100,000. So that's why the board has not seen that. It came in just right at 100,000, maybe even a little bit above for some of this stuff. So what it does, from when I wrote down that essentially it's a communication a tool to be able to communicate with prospective as well as current students It has applications that will allow for increased use of it from other parts of the campus, the Alumni Center as an example. It is integrated with Banner. And when I looked at the different scores or the different costs that we had received back, which accounted for about 20% of the RFP score, there was one that was just a little bit above the technical solutions.
You touched it.
Never fails. There was one that was a little bit less, but they had an implementation that was not advantageous to the college. And the committee looked at that and decided that they would go for element or recommend element 451, which provided a more full-blown implementation. Essentially what I think Technolutions, one of the providers had said is, we'll train you to train everybody else. And with the short period of time that we have to be able to turn this around before the fall, we knew we had to move very quickly on it. So we did have won't go into detail, but we did have a higher proficient level of people, more technically savvy on that committee that were evaluating a lot more so than myself. So, Mr. Chairman, what we're looking for is that the board authorize the administration to negotiate and execute a contract with Element 451 for the college district's customer relationship management system. I stand for any questions.
How long is the contract? Is it $100,000 a year or is that?
I think it's 3 years, as I recall, 3 years. And I think there may be a couple of year options for a couple more if we so choose, but we're locked in at that price.
For the 3 years, we're locked in at that price.
Yes, we're locked in for the 3 years. That's correct.
There's
Trustee.
such a big difference in the 100,000 and the 644,000. What's the difference there? That's huge.
You want to try to take that one or?
From what I recall, they were not higher education management softwares. They were more using some other Salesforce and other companies that aren't related to higher education. So there were additional layers and pieces that we do not need.
Anybody got any questions?
It works for student services to keep the students informed, and then does it go into the business office and say, this is what they got and this is what you need to bill them, or what? I'm a little bit.
Yeah, I haven't, probably not so much on the business side, but financial aid, there are some advantages for having financial aid, having regular communication with it. And they have some of those tools right now. But what this is doing is putting all of that under one umbrella, one vendor providing those services. And again, one of the services that we had that had one application, which was the crucial one, was going away at the end of this month. And so this caused us to look for something more comprehensive and something that would be able to replace that. And because they were not giving us any other options, that particular company, they wanted an extended contract, not just a short-term contract.
Okay. Any further questions?
So we'll have record enrollment if we get this.
I will definitely pass that one on.
Well, as I recall back, when I was the president of the Alumni Association, we always had some difficulty in figuring out how to communicate with former students. We just didn't have great records on that. So does this help us in keeping those guys in our system?
Yes, it does. There's automated communications that can be sent out to current students, former students, all those things. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Well, I would entertain a motion that the board authorize the administration to negotiate and execute a contract with Element 451 Inc. for the college district's customer relationship management system. Trustee
I'm
Aylard.
gonna let Dr. Krausen make that motion.
Trustee Aylard makes the motion, looking for a second.
I'll second it. We gotta go.
Trustee Mosier makes the second. Any additional questions or discussion?
I'll jump in here real quick since I hadn't really said anything about this particular software. Target X is the kind of the one that most schools use, but I can see the price is, almost double. So I don't have a problem with going with this. Again, I don't know a whole lot about them though.
So what you're saying is that other schools do use software like this to do what they need to do?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Good.
That helps me.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, trustees.
Thank you so much. Okay, that concludes the regular portion of our meeting. At this point, we will be going into executive session in accordance with 551.071, 551.072, and 551.074. I would suggest we take a 10-minute break, and then we will come back into session.
Mr. Chairman, can I, before we go out?
Yes.
I've been thinking ever since our discussion on this enrollment and so forth, I would really like to see us have an opportunity to either as a workshop, small or before a board meeting or something, to have a more, I think there's a lot that we need to learn and understand about the enrollment numbers and the contact, we have time to tell us the contact hours, how that works. I don't think anybody's ever done that. And maybe get the benefit of Dr. McBride and Dr. Hensley about distance learning and whether or not what's the national trends on some of that stuff. I think that it would be helpful to just have take 30 or 40 minutes or an hour just to be able to discuss those things and a little more when we have such a move to go through our agenda, we could just spend a little time talking about them.
Chancellor Hensley, is that something that we could potentially put on an agenda as a workshop prior to a board meeting?
Absolutely. We'll look forward to doing that. Thank you so much for that suggestion. We do have new trustees who are not as familiar with all of what this means, contact hours and enrollment trends and distance learning and face-to-face and all of the 5 different modalities and so forth. So we'll look forward to doing that. If it's all right with you, we'll probably schedule that sometime August, September-ish. All righty.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. It's 11:31. We're going to go take a 10-minute break before we come back into executive session.